Okay, greetings. Welcome to our August 13th City Council meeting. Please join me in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Councilmember Stearns. Mayor Pro Tem Wagner. Here. Councilmember Sutcliffe is running late. Councilmember Ingstrom. Here. Mayor Mortar.
I'm here, thank you. Okay, we're going to begin our meeting tonight with a special presentation. I'm thrilled to introduce Bethany Muller from Siskiyou Economic Development Council, and a little bit toward the tail end, Tanya Dowse, Executive Director. Please come on up, folks. And this is a special presentation for which they have about 15 minutes, including questions from council, but there's no conversation between the audience and the special presenter. Welcome, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, councilmen and women, for having us tonight. We appreciate your time and consideration, and are looking forward to presenting a quick update. I'll just quickly cover some of the information in our 2017 annual report, and then I'll turn it over to, I'm joined here by our Executive Director, Tanya Dowse, and she will provide a quick TBIT update. So I just want to begin by sharing with you the plethora of resources that I placed on your tables. We have our 2017 annual report. All these materials are available on our website, by the way, siskiyoucounty.org. And we also have some really wonderful educational materials that we've provided, including a strategy on just a couple of different sectors, like retail trends in the marketplace and what that's been looking like. We have some great educational materials for elected leaders for economic development. And so I hope that these are useful to you. This past year, we've been very busy, and I'm just going to try to highlight some of the main accomplishments. We're excited that we are entering into year 2 of the Small Business Development Center. This is a federally recognized program, and we're really excited to house it at the Siskiyou Economic Development Council. Last year we had contact with about 42 businesses. We have been working with numerous businesses in Mount Shasta and South County. We really think this is a great program because it connects us to a whole network of counselors from across the Northern California region. So businesses can come in and they can get one-on-one counseling, but then they can also have access to more in-depth counseling if they need it, and we can connect them to those counselors. In addition, if they need access to finance or capital resources, we can also connect them to that through some of our partners. So we have a lot going on with the SBDC. We have a workshop in collaboration with JEDI coming up on August 28th, and I didn't bring my flyers with me, but we have that on our Facebook page, and we've been advertising that workshop in partnership with JEDI and COS. And we also will be participating in the Google Startup Weekend. So we have been busy helping to promote that and getting some business support for that event as well. And if you know of any businesses that need assistance, please don't hesitate to refer them to us. You know, we are happy to help any business that, you know, needs it. So we just want to make sure that businesses have the support they need. A quick update on our Brownfields program. As you all are familiar with our Brownfields program, it's a program to help you know, create that foundation, our base of our economy here in Siskiyou County. And we've been working on the landing. We're getting very close. It's, for the most part, cleaned up. We are in the contracting process right now for a last cleanup on that property. And so that should be, we'll be contracting with the consultant soon, and we are actively working with the city manager and staff to identify resources for development of that property. We are also working on the electric vehicle infrastructure, and most of those will be completed by the end of 2018. We have 5 electric vehicle charging stations in Siskiyou County, all up and down the I-5 corridor. There's a map in the annual report. The one, there's one at Yaks in Dunsmuir currently, and then there's one in Carl's Jr. in Wairika, but there will be one at Ray's grocery store here in Mount Shasta, and that will be installed by the end of the year. And I think I can say this, but we're also working with the Tourism Business Improvement District to create some really exciting like tours for electric vehicles, for electric vehicle drivers. So more details on that coming soon. But we know that there's going to be a great demand for electric vehicles here in Siskiyou County. So the infrastructure is very important. Lastly, before I turn it over to Tanya, we have also been actively engaged in workforce over the past year. Specifically, we are working on a program called the Employment Training Panel, and it is a state-run program that we are applying to be a local service provider for that reimburses businesses for training their employees. And so it's a very tangible program. We will be working with businesses once we become contracted. So if they want to do any on-the-job training for their employees, they can upfront the costs of that training, and then they will be reimbursed by the state. So it's a great program for businesses because a lot of times they have very technical or very niche training that they're providing, and there's not always a training program out there. So there is definitely a demand here in Siskiyou County, and we are working on bringing that program here. And we're also involved in the SOAR, the Siskiyou Occupational Advancement Roadmap Strategic Planning Collaborative. That is a comprehensive strategy, really, more long-term, but we've also been involved in that process as well. So I'm going to turn over to Tanya, and she's going to just provide what we've been up to with the TBID, and then we're going to show some video here.
Thanks, Bethany. Thank you again for the time. I'm actually going to pinch hit for Nikki Brown, who's our program manager with our tourism work. She couldn't make it this evening, so I'm sorry that you're getting the B team. So our tourism program, or Tourism Business Improvement District, is an assessment district created here by you and the other jurisdictions across Siskiyou County in collaboration with the lodging properties in Siskiyou County. So an assessment district is a self-imposed mandatory district that businesses vote amongst themselves to implement for the purpose of promoting or growing their sector of the economy. So the lodging properties in Siskiyou County 4 years ago, just a little, almost four-ish years ago, voted to create the assessment district. And they assessed themselves 2% of revenue, and they put it in a fund to collaborate on a marketing program called Discover Siskiyou. This is the third year, we're just completing the third year of the assessment district. They spent the first year getting organized, creating their committee for oversight of the district, establishing a relationship with a marketing and creative agency, doing consumer research, and identifying their target customer and marketplace. In the second year, they really rolled up their sleeves and worked on developing creative assets, creating the brand, Discover Siskiyou, the brand guidelines, and creating the visual for the campaign, all of the content that goes into it. And then they launched the campaign just slightly over a year ago. So what is this, summer of 18? So summer of 17, they officially launched the campaign, which included the Discover Siskiyou website. If you haven't checked out the website, please do so. It also includes a very robust set of social media channels that are the hashtag #SeeSiskiyou, and a digital campaign that's really targeting and promoting Siskiyou as a tourism destination to visitors identified in their target market, and then continuing to build content and creative assets. And we're just now, as we begin this 4th year of operating this campaign, starting to develop some printed materials. Digital is where we spent our first initial launch, and that's really typical right now for what's happening in the marketplace for promotion to tourism. But we are really happy to share with you a first look at some printed materials as well. So I'm here to provide whatever information I can about the tourism program and Discover Siskiyou campaign. We do have a quick video presentation. I have to apologize that we don't have a good angle for everybody in the room to see it. So all of this material is readily available online. There are 2 places to find it. You can go to the Discover Siskiyou website. I think that's about the 10th time I've said that. Discover Siskiyou website, and this material is available there. You can also go to an industry resources website for Discover Siskiyou, and that's really intended for the lodging properties, but it's also available to anyone who wants to access these materials. I'm going to encourage, if there are members in the audience, I know we might probably have too many folks to have them switch locations, but if there's any chance that you want to watch this, please find a strategic spot, and I'm going to ask Bethany to push play.
And I also just want to mention that these videos are produced by Dunsmuir-based Pusher, so we've been working very closely with them. And we have a Trail Town video.
So how much time do the videos take? 'Cause we have a couple of questions. 5? Okay, okay, great.
I think there was one more, but I think we're running out of time, so.
Those were fun. Beautiful. Okay, thank you. Questions for Tanya or Bethany from council?
Hi, Bethany. You mentioned the Siskiyou Startup Weekend. What's your role in that? And can you tell us more about that, when that's happening, and what your main goal is there?
Okay, I have to admit I don't know off the top of my head which weekend it is. My coworker Sean Smith has been actively promoting that event. So from as far as I know, we have been actively finding sponsors for that event from the businesses that we interact with and promoting it on our social media and in our communication channels to, get more people out there. And he may also be talking with some businesses as well about it, if I'm not mistaken, so.
Thank you.
October 5 to 7.
October 5 to 7. Thank you.
October 5th through 7th? Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Other questions of Bethany and Tanya? I do have one question. I'd love to know what percentage of the T-bid revenues you get from Mount Shasta lodgings and the ski park combined.
Yeah, so in terms of the Mount Shasta as a jurisdiction, it represents about 22% of the entire revenues. We cannot pull the ski park out in particular because it is proprietary. We can't pull one lodging property out of all that data. And also they're located in the county. So it's kind of hard to pull that,
Sure.
tiny little percentage out. But in terms of the lodging properties located within the city of Mount Shasta, it's about 22 for the 17-18 fiscal year, which ended June 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 22% of the total revenues come from Mount Shasta lodging
Yeah.
owners. And then the ski park is an addition to that and isn't pull-outable because it's part of the county.
Yeah, and in terms of the entire 3 years that we've been in the marketplace, Mount Shasta represents about 21%
21.
total.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
So we're advancing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions for these fine women? Okay, well, thank you for all the work that you do on our behalf, and we look forward to exciting accomplishments this next year.
Thank you for your time.
And we're going to try not to be disruptive.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Okay. Okay, I'd like to go now to public comment. Do we have a sign-in sheet, Kath? Okay, very good. So this is an opportunity for those of you in the audience to share with us in a 3-minute comment period what you'd like us to know about for those items that are either part of the consent agenda or items not on the agenda, because when we get to those specific agenda items, you of course are welcome to add your comments then. Okay, so I will begin. Vicki, yours says item number 3. You're welcome to make any comments you want, but you won't get a response.
Is
Right, I understand that, but can I have more than 3 minutes then for the two items? One is
No,
completely
you
unrelated.
can't. 3 minutes
All right,
total.
I thought when it was
3
an
and
agenda
4.
item,
Yeah,
I could
thank
discuss
you.
it. All right, so I like the films. I thought they were very engaging. I'm hoping that they will do one on the spiritual community and a lot of the conferences that are drawn to this area because of the spirituality and the retreat aspect. I think it was very good for the sports, but I'd like to see that included. I'm very happy about the Browns.
What was the sport you mentioned?
All the sports were
Sports.
very good. You know, they definitely covered that very well. I am interested, again, I thought you asked an appropriate question about what percentage of the funds come from Mount Shasta and the ski park. I'm hoping that, you know, in their outreach, they'll remember that when Tanya came in February of 2014, she said that we don't even need to advertise for Mount Shasta. We just step outside, look at the mountain, look at the lakes, and it advertises for itself. Keeping that in mind, I see that lots of the other towns and cities are not participating, so we are doing more than our share in providing them with a lot of funding. The reason I'm here tonight is because of the email that I sent to all of you with regard to the franchise agreement with Pacific Power. Knowing that it hasn't been revisited since 3 days after Kennedy was assassinated, and it is now 55 years later, and all the other communities are charging much more. They're receiving more from Pacific Power, so I'm hoping you will put this on an agenda very shortly, because last year, $51,000 of our ratepayers' funds came back to the city, and that's 1%, and really you're entitled to 2%. And if you revisit it, I would suggest that you do what Wairika did, and theirs is 3%. They're now getting 2.5%, but they can go up to 3%. So if it's just 2%, you would get $51,000 more next year. And certainly under the circumstances of the very flawed, as you called it, a failed opt-out system, they have proven to be not honest. They've proven to be far less than transparent in every area of the opt-out program. We think that this is high time to revisit that, and I don't know why it hasn't been done for 5 years, but now is the time to do it. If there ever was a time, if there's a different power company that you could engage with to compete with them, I would suggest that you look into that. So thank you very much for saying you would look into it, but I wanted it to be on the record publicly that we really are expecting that to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. Next, we have Paul Beck.
Paul Beck, Mount Shasta, California, and member of the Planning Commission. Subject I want to talk about very briefly, I think was already addressed by Chief Mello 1 or 2 meetings ago. I had intended to show up at the last meeting and talk about it briefly, but I did not. So we do, as part of our general plan, have a resilience plan baked into that. Given the events of yesterday, the very tragic events of yesterday on the freeway, I really think we need to devise a contingency plan that could have easily gotten out of hand. I don't know if I'm wrong there, but I mean, a couple things could have gone wrong and we could have been in really serious trouble. For instance, right now today, and not to ill speak of it, but we have farmers market blocking our downtown area. So what do we do? How do we facilitate? How do we get emergency vehicles in and out? If we have another Mendocino or a car fire, it could have easily done something that it would have mimicked the car fire. I don't think we should wait till the crap hits the fan to know what we're doing and run around. And no disrespect to anybody in our local fire or law enforcement, that's not what I'm getting at, but I really think we need to push the resiliency part of our general plan forward and really think about what we're going to do if we have a tragedy or a disaster like a fire or some issue as a result of some activity on Mount Shasta, a lahar, or mudslide, any number of things. I just don't think we're really prepared. That makes me feel very ill at ease, and I've just been giving a lot of thought to it myself, and I really hope we could do something about that, and that's about all I have to say, and I would gladly volunteer for any committee if the city decides to move forward and do anything. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Melinda.
Melinda Willie, Mount Shasta. I'm grateful I'm following him. I have the emergency evacuation grab and go list here. There's been quite a bit of conversation on social media on Ms. Mag email list and also on Nextdoor. Yesterday I met with several people in town figuring out our own evacuation plans. 2 weeks ago, CAL FIRE and the different fire divisions were here, and they mentioned that they would have a letter out in 2 weeks explaining what our evacuation plans should be for Mount Shasta. We haven't seen anything, and I know that everybody is working as hard as they can with what's going on in our county and other counties. But I'm not just speaking for myself tonight, I'm speaking for other people that couldn't come. There is a continual anxiety in our community that we don't know how to get out, that we don't see any support visually. I'm sure it's happening behind the scenes, but we're not seeing anything in the newspaper from the different agencies telling us what to do in case something happens. The idea came up with Chief Mello a couple of weeks ago. Several people talked to him about putting a siren in place. Like yesterday when that situation happened on North I-5, if that had gotten out of hand, as Paul was talking about, how were we supposed to know about it if we're other places in the community? We need to have some type of alarm system. The paper needs to be involved in having, weekly monitoring or stories in the paper of how you can evacuate, these are the ways to go. Even just having this emergency evacuation checklist. I brought these because people were going to meet me here tonight and get them because online they don't show up very well. So Pages actually helped discount the copying of these. Greg Dinger found them. So the community's pulling together as citizens, but we need some more help from the police department, the fire department, CAL FIRE, to give us some information than us just making it up on our own. They're the professionals. We really need to see something in the paper. Give us some information so we can feel safe, if we can, in this situation. Yesterday really got a lot of people in this community very scared. Some people are planning to leave right now and not come back till October. Somebody in one of the government agencies told somebody, leave and come back in October. That was their answer to how to calm themselves down, is leave. And I don't think we want that to be happening, but if we can have more information, we'll feel more powerful. So please. Are y'all going to talk about this? Any of the CAL FIRE people going to talk about this tonight? Pardon me?
Thank you, Melinda.
Well, they're all here. They're all here. It's like the elephant in the room and no one's talking about it.
Thank you. Joe Montgomery?
Hi, my name is Joe Montgomery. I just want to say a few words about the fire department. The number one function or purpose of government is protection of the citizens. So your main priority should be the police department and the fire department. They're the ones that protect us. And I know tonight you're dealing with the fire department, the MOA. Anyway, I want to take this opportunity to thank the two chiefs and all the brave men back here who protect us. I know I go to sleep at night a little bit, knowing that the fire department is going to protect me, the police department is going to protect me. So anything that you can do feasibly, do for them. I appreciate it, and so do thousands of other citizens of Mount Shasta. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And I have Mike Brown down. Mike, are you still here? There you are.
Hi, Mike Brown, Mount Shasta citizen. And I'm here tonight to kind of support the fire department, police department, and stuff like that. But I come at it from a different side. I work on the private side. You know, we do go to fires and stuff, and everybody's doing what they can. And when they start running out of resources, they're going to go to the private side. So what I see here, they're asking for a couple guys, and there's some funding, which we don't have funding. I understand that part. But so what happens is these guys are going to opt out. Our young guys that we've trained, or these guys here, you know, got families to feed just like I do, and everybody else got a house payment and that. They're going to get trained here, and they're going somewhere else. And they're going to get called on fire or support somewhere else. So what I see is if we could get these positions filled, and they'll be here, these guys go out on strike teams, and they use some of that the emergency funding money and stuff like that, the OES stuff. And then that money's brought back into here, and we spend this money in the community so we have programs and stuff so these guys can stay here. So it's, you have to look at it a little different way, but if you understand how it works, those guys would be here and be spending that money in this community. And what happens, the way I look at it is, if we're not giving these guys here that money, other guys from Reading, all up and down the state, guys from Oregon, guys from out of state, are going to be coming down here, and when they leave, they take that money back to where they're at. So that's just my opinion. I think we do need them. We do need to get the wages up. I mean, we were just talking about some stuff with Matt. Why do these guys want to go to CAL FIRE? I mean, I don't know how much you guys look into that. I mean, it's like apples and oranges. What these guys make, the benefits, where their opportunities are to go forward, we don't supply that. And I know it takes a lot of money to do that. So we've got to find a way to have some funding. I don't have that answer. You got a good job. But I'm just here to support them for that. And I think we need those spots because that money's going to come right back here when they go out on wildland fires and put that money right back into our district. You know, we got lucky with some stuff, just like Wiley said here. Everybody's a little on edge with these fires in Reading and Mariposa stuff and that. You start using up a lot of resources, and I hate to see what the bill's going to cost this year for the state of California. So anyway, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any others, please?
Betty Krieger, Mount Shasta. A new series began. The burden of truth reminded me that the burden of truth is a heavy burden, especially when people with power and authority promote lies as truth. People like the telecom and utilities industry regarding EMF exposure. But the burden is especially heavy when it is our own Councilwoman Wagner who shamelessly insults people by saying those who report EMF sensitivities are deluded, psychologically unstable, and clearly incapable of discernment. You know, the it's all in their heads theory. Well, to some degree that is, because EMFs, like chemicals, attack the blood-brain barrier. I am not EMF sensitive, but I have been chemically sensitive since the late 1980s. I had to leave law school and go on disability because I was so severe. What you say about those sensitive to EMFs is the same as has been said about me and millions of others for decades, despite the fact that there is proof beyond a doubt of the detrimental effects of chemicals. Just like the chemical, tobacco, lead, and asbestos industries before them, the telecom and utility industries go to great lengths to hide the dangers of their products. On social media, Barbara continued to cling to the single 2004 WHO EMF project, confirming what she already believed. Even after William and I gave her links to thousands of peer-reviewed studies, she remained willfully ignorant, stating, quote, "The internet allows us to find support for any biased view we choose to believe in," end quote. Yes, Barbara, it certainly does, and you have done that. While you believe in and focus on one study, one financed by the telecommunication industry's lobbying organizations, you refuse to acknowledge thousands of independent peer-reviewed scientific studies as legitimate. Astonishingly, you compared those of us who believe EMFs are harmful to the Flat Earth Society. You were right about one thing: science doesn't support the Flat Earth theory, and neither does it support your Flat Earth-like theory that EMFs are not harmful. I know people who've lost all hope of getting better and ended their lives because they were in so much agony. And speaking of losing hope, Kathy, your stated reason for not voting to approve the resolution asking the CPUC to reverse their decision regarding moratoriums was because You didn't want to give us hope. If, as you claim, the council had no authority, why even hold the meeting? Why approve the second resolution? You claim CPU has limits to their authority. No, they do not. They are the ultimate authority. It defies logic to say you have no authority to approve one resolution and then approve another. They can't say yes if you don't ask, and you wouldn't even ask, yet you hoped we would continue to take our case to those with authority to ask. Who would those be? If neither the council nor the CPUC has that authority, as you claim, how can you ask us to hope after saying you don't want to give us hope? As Aung San Suu Kyi said, there is no hope without endeavor. We continue to endeavor.
Thank you, Betty. Other comments, please? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Sorry, I'm not on the list. I didn't sign up when I came in.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'm not on the list. I didn't sign
No,
up when I
that's
came in.
fine. Just share your name,
Yeah,
please.
Brian Witherell. I've been a citizen since 1992. Worked in emergency services since 1987. Just like to go on record as saying that actually I think Mount Shasta City is getting a deal right now with what we're paying for fire services. Looking at budgets from other communities and the staffing levels and the administrative costs, from what I have seen and looking at it, it appears that we're actually getting a very good deal, and maybe paying a little bit more to continue that service would be an excellent idea, especially with the fire examples of yesterday and within the community, how quickly they're stopped. They're doing an excellent job here as compared to other agencies and communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Other comments? Okay, then. Thank you all. I'd like to move on then to council and staff comments. Can we begin with you, Bruce?
Thank you, Mayor, and members of the council. So I have a couple of brief statements. Then I would like to turn it over to Chief Cross, some comments on police activities, and then we'll go to Chief Mello with fire comments. So my comments, first I'd like to inform the public that the period for filing to run for city council in the upcoming election, the deadline for that is this Wednesday, the 15th of August. So if anybody wishes to take out papers before then, they can come by, pick up the papers from the clerk, and get the necessary signatures and file. Additionally, the council members, we're going after a grant to hire 2 fellows to come here and do research on existing infrastructure as the initial phase in our overall infrastructure program to upgrade the infrastructure. The 2 individuals on that program have now been hired, and they will start work here on September 10th. Initially, they'll be assigned to Reading, working with Pace Engineering, getting orientation, and then coming into the city full-time. And also, on the general plan, the visioning survey that has been out will be open for public comment until September 14th. To date, we have received about 180 responses to that visioning survey, and hope to obtain some more before we close that off and bring it before the Planning Commission and the Council. We also, as I pointed out previously, we were approved for the grant loan application we filed with USDA for the downtown sewer improvements. That money, those loan commitments, grant commitments have been made by USDA, and those monies are now available to the city so we can plan to start those improvements next spring. Because of that, the Rural California Housing Development Corporation has expressed renewed interest in putting together a proposal for a multifamily project on the Ivy and Chestnut Street property, basically the old Danco site. So we met with them again, reviewed the process, and we're looking forward to their application. And that would conclude my comments. So I'd like Chief Cross to take over.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I don't know if, I'm sure y'all noticed, but we finally think we have about 90% of our monthly report. What you see is what we put together. Tonight, I'm hoping for a little feedback. I sound really loud. A little feedback, if you have any, ideas or changes or tweaks you want to make to that to make it more informative. My hope is so it speaks for itself, not just for you folks, but the folks who happen to get the agenda. And so like I said, I'm hoping it speaks for itself. I'm hoping it satisfies some of your wants and wishes. There's a lot of data, there's a lot of graphs, a lot of moving parts in that, and then there's some narrative stuff there. And of course, I have a couple ideas after seeing it and put it in the document. I have some changes I'd like to make on my own to make it a little easier to read for myself. So if you have any feedback, I'd appreciate it right now, and I'll take it back and add to it.
I was very happy to see that timeline, a year's worth of data versus just the single month by month. So you can see a trend. You can start to see, well, where are the glitches? Where are the jumps? And so I guess, so very much appreciate your staff. I think there's someone in dispatch that's working. Is that?
Lauren and Don put together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please thank them for me because I think
I will.
Their job's just.
I'll see them tomorrow.
Very clear graphs, easy to read, very appreciative, and the way that they graphed quite a number of factors. So it was great to see it all. So yeah, excellent beginning.
Okay.
I think eventually, yeah, we would want to think about when we see jumps in the graphs, things that that maybe start thinking about. Well, I wonder why that jump happened, or some of the factors that. When you start seeing non-linear lines, then you can start thinking about, oh, I wonder what's going on there. So it starts to get to think about the process and stuff. So very appreciative. Thank you.
Glad you like it.
Very good step. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Other comments for Parrish?
So which one of the two of you is going to address the highway crash? Okay.
And what about this thing? Is this from you guys?
No.
Where's the sound coming from?
I don't know who this came from.
Test.
Yes. All right. Can you hear me? I'm not on. Okay. Yeah, I too appreciated it, Parrish. I liked seeing the activity over time. I wonder if you could share with us the conclusions you've drawn from seeing this data, the changes, the trends, the challenges, the successes. Share with us your conclusions.
Well, truth be told, I see that data on a regular basis already. I'm just now found a way where I can share it with the folks, to you folks, and then the public. We keep an eye on those numbers quite specifically because that's how we react to things. And being a small department, we're more reactive rather than proactive. With one person, maybe two people working, you're usually going to calls and not really creating an agenda for ourselves proactively. So these numbers are very important to us in how we address different, crime activities within the city. Fortunately, the numbers, as you can see over the last several years, they're pretty low, which is why this is a great city. But we use those numbers on a regular basis to make a lot of decisions about extra patrol, where we might want to buy certain, activities. Like, for instance, we were getting Carbergs up in behind Sisson in the track up there. So the numbers just skyrocketed. When you have only a couple in a month and you have 6 or 7, well, you can see we have to address that. So a couple ways we did that was extra patrol by using that data. And then we also bought, I shouldn't say this, but a GPS tracker that we can, it looks like a purse. And, if there is some activity on a regular basis, we can stash that in the vehicle. And if a person takes the purse or even takes the vehicle, we can track that device through the internet and the GPS systems. So all that was derived from the data that we keep an eye on. But in most of the data, it's pretty low and it's pretty static, as you can see, and we're really proud of that because that's the great effort we do to keep crime at a minimum here.
Okay, thanks. And I'd love to see, as I mentioned before, I'd love to see more information about the court activity, whatever's available, what kinds of cases are moving forward, and whether they're being settled, and which types are being settled.
Sure.
I think that would be
Yeah, that was one of the
informative.
tweaks that we have the court data in there. It's not really specific and tell you what it's about.
I'm sorry?
We have court data in there. You're right. It's not specific as to what the court item is about. And that's something we can work on and figure out a way to add that to it as well.
Yeah, something about the number of cases that your small department takes on and the number of which are settled out of court versus taken to fruition, however you put that.
That's good enough, yeah.
Whether they end up in, jailed at time.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, okay. And I heard what you said about your data, but it would be really great to hear from you what your priorities are for the year, given, we hear periodically about issues around crosswalks or pedestrian safety or a variety of things.
Absolutely.
I think it would be great because we can look at these data and we can see how it compares to last year, but we don't have any context in which to evaluate whether this is what you would expect from a small town, what you do on an annual basis to put emphasis on a certain thing, proactively or not, that kind of thing. So your professional hit on how your department's doing and what you'd like to see changed over time, I think that would be
certainly.
great.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts. Thank you for asking.
How's the foot patrol working out?
It's doing great.
Is
I mean,
it?
it's a public relation, gym. It's also good. We're like a traveling kiosk. I mean, most of the things that we do on foot patrol is giving directions, places to eat, places to go visit. Like I said, town's a really safe town, and so when those guys are out there on foot, they're getting to know the business owners and creating relationships, and which is small town policing and what it's all about. That community-oriented style policing, and that foot patrol just enhances that approach and that philosophy.
Thank you.
Anything else for the chief? No, okay.
Good job yesterday, too. Yeah, I saw that so many cars. I was driving past, coming south. I saw like 30 vehicles. I saw Public Works, the police, the fire. Everybody was out there collaborating. Good job.
And not to steal any thunder from Matt, but it's all about the team.
Okay, thank you. Chief Mello.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. The city manager wanted to touch on a little bit with the car fire. I did not get a hold of anybody today. We got a little bit busy, obviously, with our own stuff. But what I do know is the west flank towards Whiskeytown is doing really well. That's where our battalion chief is with his strike team. He said it's looking really well. They do have a contingency line in at Dog Creek that they did a big burn operation. I don't know if it made it that far, the fire at all. But on the other hand, one of the CAL FIRE strike teams came home today. Our strike team is coming home tomorrow, so that means we are timed out, which is the 21 days that they at least have to have 2 days off. But at this point, they're not going back to that incident. So that tells me that things are looking good. The Hertz fire down across west of that fire blew up yesterday. It went up to 4,500 acres, I believe, and it was 5% contained yesterday. We had some Forest Service engines here on our incident that had to go immediate need to Gilliam Road, I believe that's called, to do structure protection. So that's all I know about that. I wasn't able to get a hold of anybody. So on our incident yesterday, unfortunately, we had 3 fatalities. It was 2-vehicle traffic accident, went off the roadway, burned about a half acre. We were able to catch it. We did have a full boat of aircraft coming, 9 engines, 3 water tenders, a bulldozer, and a helicopter that was staged in Weed. We did cancel all the aircraft right away because we were able to hook the head. It did go out relatively quick. That we had a few issues. One of our engines broke a throttle cable on the way to the fire. We were able to pick back up and get a reserve engine out there right away. Like I said, we had a bunch of help coming because of the conditions that we're facing this year. We also had some issues with traffic. People blocked all of this. They blocked Spring Hill Road and Mount Shasta Boulevard. We were unable, because people were going to be looky-loos, and we were unable to get our equipment into the scene. So when you see a fire, please, please go the other way. You're just making it harder for us to get in. So with that said, we were on it for 12 hours yesterday. Again, we're 8 hours today. Sorry I wasn't able to get home and take a shower. I'm a little dirty. So besides that, things went really well. The team effort from CHP, the MATE team, which is the major accident investigation team from CHP, Caltrans, ourselves, Weed City, CAL FIRE, and the Forest Service, we worked flawless. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Matt?
You said the roads were blocked, so how did you manage that? Did you, it just took you longer to get there? You had to move some cars aside?
Correct.
Okay.
Sergeant Gibson went up and cleared the roadway for us.
Okay. Otherwise, there was no, I guess you could access from Kingston?
We couldn't get the engines that close from Kingston Road.
You couldn't
We couldn't get that close from Kingston side.
They were too far from Kingston.
Correct.
I can say that. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. I had planned to address this in my comment, but I'll just start by saying that living in the townhouses about a half a mile probably from that site, we saw the fire immediately. And there is no vehicular access from the Kingston Road side to the northwest side of the park.
No, I meant to the freeway.
There's freeway access, but there's no access through the park. And we saw the incident shortly after it exploded, being as how we lived there. And we were very comforted to know and to see the recon helicopter right away, to hear the sirens. We reported it immediately, and the sirens were on their way within about 30 seconds. You were already on your way, obviously. And everything I've heard was about the interagency cooperation was excellent. There was a person I talked to who was from a different area who said that the cooperation between the local agencies, whether it be Caltrans or CHP, the local county agencies, our city agencies, was just supreme here. So I really want to thank you all for the work that you did, and including the hazard tree cutting down. I understand you saved us a bunch of money. Caltrans, I hope, is going to provide for a cleanup crew for some of the equipment that's over the side. Yes. I'm really sorry to hear about the 3 deaths. It's a tragic thing, and in fact, I'd like to just ask us to take a moment of silence for those folks who died, and also for all the folks who died in the car fire, as well as the people who lost their homes and who are suffering business-wise. Just a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, how about council comments?
Thank you, Matt. You guys did a terrific job. I watched it from afar.
Thank you.
And you knocked it down really, really fast. I was amazed. So response was great. I talked to many people who were in the know, and they said it was flawless as well. So thank you. It was not an easy task. I don't know how you guys can do it. I had no way I could. Thank you.
Yeah. Betty's leaving the room for a phone call, but I did want to respond to her comment. Basically, the comments that I said about RF radiation and our exposure to that were read from a study by the World Health Organization. So I'm not necessarily saying that those are my personal views, but I am open to continuing to learn about RF radiation. I hope that Betty is also. I know that she feels that radiation makes her sick, and I know there's some people that have decided by 100% certainty that that's the case. If you're at 100% certainty, then there really is no conversation that we can have, because I'm still in doubt. I'm still researching, and so are the scientists. The scientists are continuing to uncover truths. Now, I've asked a number of questions for the people who have decided that RF is unhealthy. I've asked them to, if you're going to not rely on established scientific researchers, whether it's the World Health Organization or the Scientific Committee on Science and Technology, if you're not going to rely on established researchers and people who have worked diligently in the industry, it's very common to pull industry scientists over to the research world and vice versa. They go back and forth. Then what I'm looking for is, let me share your criteria for why your scientists are the new establishment, if that's what you're considering. So I think we need to consider all the research that's out there and not immediately reject the established scientific community because it doesn't agree with our opinion about what we believe is to be true. So it's important for us to stay with the science and try to continue to address that. I definitely feel for the people that are saying that they're feeling sick from it. I have compassion for them, but I also think we still need to continue to uncover the science so that when we do ask for government to change their policies, or that we actually are basing our questions or our policies on actual threats and not perceived threats. So just wanted to comment on her comment.
Thank you, Barbara. I'd like to comment a moment on the concerns expressed about emergency evacuation, wildfire safety. I did inquire about where we're at with the wildfire safety guide that we talked about. It's not a letter, it's a guide that's coming out. And what I learned is that the fire department and the volunteers spent one entire day and parts of 2 other days, I believe, stuffing envelopes and sticking stamps on them to go out to the 1,200 or so households. So it should be going out, is it later this week? Tomorrow. And it does have a step-by-step. It has, I forgot to bring it, I'm so sorry. I asked for it and then forgot to bring it. Yeah, may I have it? Guess you're awake now if you weren't before, sorry. So it has in it steps to prepare to evacuate, such as designating an emergency meeting location, establish escape routes from your home and your community. So I commend Melinda and her neighbors for doing just that. Have an evacuation plan for your pets, an out-of-area point of contact, and fire extinguishers. Assemble an emergency supply kit, which might have, which would have some of those things that you might, think are obvious: flashlight, a map, non-perishable food and water, copies of important documents, and that sort of thing. So that's on its way. There is a map in here that shows arterial routes. I would like to hear Matt's comment about, I think what you said before, Chief, was that we don't have established evacuation routes because we don't know where because it'll depend on where the incident is and the specific circumstances surrounding the emergency. But if you could say more about that, as well as your thoughts about some kind of a siren. I know I have heard comments about that too. I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Lessons learned, we get a green sheet every year, or every incident that happens throughout this. A green sheet, it's called. Basically what it is a incident action review. If somebody gets hurt or killed on an incident, we get the green sheet once the investigation is over. I think it was the Sonora fire. They had exactly what we had planned to put on this for evacuation areas. 2 of their evacuation areas were actually burned over with people in them. So they did away with that throughout the state. They're using main arterial routes to get out of town, whether we send you south, north, east, west, whatever way we need to, depending on the fire. We'll take the one last night, for example. If that had the strong north winds on it, we would have started sending everybody through the boulevard, if the looky-loos, and get them up north if the fire was going south. So we wouldn't say a specific area, if that makes sense to everybody. Does that answer your question? So, and the same thing on the other end of town, or if we would have had a south wind on this, we would have got people down to Dunsmuir somewhere or further south.
Thank you. And one other question that I have, it has to do with Commissioner Beck's comment about resiliency planning that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Don't remember if we ever saw the results of that workshop, which was well attended by our fire department and other folks, the CHP, other folks throughout the county. I wonder if there is an opportunity to incorporate some of the conclusions that came out of that workshop and present them to City Council,
Yes.
in essence, to, what's the word I'm looking for? Progress them a bit faster than waiting for the general plan to have a resiliency element in it.
Yeah, Juliana and I have been working together, and I don't remember the gentleman's name now. Unfortunately, he was supposed to meet with us 2 weeks ago for that, and he ended up at the car fire to help rehab. So right now, fire season started really early this year. It never really ended from last year. So everybody's kind of booked up. We are working on that to try to get things done. And my understanding is there is some grant money out there that we may be able to get and start thinning some of our forest out on. It's going to be really tough to do it on private land, and that's our goal for all the dead and dying trees, because it's very expensive. That's my goal for the community, to get some of that money to get dead and dying trees out of private property. But it's very difficult to get that. So we are going to work towards that. Unfortunately, the car fire has taken a ton of resources. And then also you wanted to talk about the siren. I did talk to a few folks that I believe are in one of the social media groups. Anyways, the city did have a siren at one point. It was an air horn. It was extremely old. The structure basically fell apart, and the air tanks got holes in it. We went to look to get a new one. It's $45,000 to $50,000. That was 20 years ago. Now, with the way things are and having it where we're dispatched out of would have to be all electronic, I would imagine it would be more. Lessons learned again. You hit a siren, like this fire we had yesterday, if we would have hit a siren and everybody started to evacuate, what's going to happen? Mass chaos. We want to have controlled chaos. That is such a thing, honestly, in the fire service. So we want to evacuate certain places at a certain time, and we have trigger points for that throughout the city, that if that fire would have got over our fuel break, we would have started to evacuate this into town. if it got further than that, and we just keep moving on down. We do have a plan in place. It's a very good plan. CAL FIRE's reviewed it, the Forest Service reviewed it, Office of Emergency Services has reviewed it. It is here. We will use it if needed, but at this point, until they come up with some kind of a siren method or a horn system that people can understand instead of the 3 beeps or just 3 long beeps where the whole city evacuates, it's not going to be, lessons learned wise, it's not going to be a good idea to do.
Thank you.
Does the reverse 911, would it come into play in this situation?
Absolutely. Like I said yesterday, we were all in contact with Battalion Chief Tavalero, had the fire at the start because we were actively engaged in fighting fire. And if it would have jumped that one fire break we had there, we would have started looking at getting people out of this area. And Kingston Road would have been one of the first ones. So the reverse 911 would have been in effect and with the code red.
Okay. I know that, I think it was 2 meetings ago, the CHP captain was here, and he pretty much concurred.
Commander, yeah.
Commander, and he concurred with what you said. It just depends on the situation.
Correct. And yesterday, we did shut the highway down for a little bit. It got so congested, we couldn't get equipment in and out, so we opened up the number 1 lane. Once we got the fire under control, we weren't going to shut it all down. If it would have kept going, we would have shut everything down and opened the highway up to get people out, just like the commander talked about. So that was all ready to go.
Thank you.
One short question. Would this incident have qualified for some kind of red alert like that we use? I mean,
From yesterday?
the code red, yeah, from yesterday, is that?
No, it never made it to that trigger point.
Never made it. So
No.
you have a list what qualifies for code red?
Correct. If it would have jumped the line that we had established, we would have started with Kingston Road in this area.
So you have a way to systematically call certain neighborhoods first, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay.
This one would have been a door-to-door. CHP, our local police officers, and the sheriff's office were ready to do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. Good discussion. Thank you. And again, hats off to our first responders, all of you. Okay, I think now it's time to move to the consent agenda, which I will read. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. A, approval of minutes, July 23rd, 2018, regular and special city council meetings, July 24th, special city council meeting. B, acceptance of Brown Act committee minutes, Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee minutes, May 23rd, 2018. C, approval of disbursements, accounts payable 7/19, 7/24, and 8/2/18, and total gross payroll and taxes for the period ending 7/15/18. D, second reading and adoption of CCO 18-04, non-conforming uses. E, approval of memorandum of understanding between the City of Mount Shasta and the Mount Shasta Fire Department and resolution CCR 18-44, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta outlining volunteer firefighter reimbursement and station coverage pay. And F, receive Police Department July 2018 report. Is there a motion?
Before we get to a motion, I have requested that item E be pulled for purpose of discussion.
Yes, we'll take up item E immediately after the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to accept consent agenda items A, B, C, D, E, and F as written.
You mean minus E?
No, all of them.
Oh, all of them, okay. You know, as I understand it, a council member has a right to remove an item from the consent agenda, and it only takes one council member, Paul.
Okay.
So we'll take up that item right afterwards. Okay, so an amended motion, maybe?
I'll second the motion minus E. as the
Okay.
agreement.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous approval. So item E, approval of memorandum of understanding between the City of Mount Shasta and the Mount Shasta Fire Department, and resolution CCR 18-44, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Mount Shasta outlining volunteer firefighting reimbursement and station coverage pay. May we have a staff report, please?
Well, I think I can shorten this.
I think they're prepared. Perhaps they can, well,
just wanted to make some amendments to the.
I just have I think, a relatively minor amendment and a comment.
okay. We need to take public comment, but go ahead.
So I had a number of questions earlier. Staff did a great job of answering my questions. I probably would have had fewer questions if the report that was written back in June had been included in the packet. I frankly didn't remember all the details. So I do appreciate staff sending that to me earlier today. The minor change I have, I think the one minor change I have is to the proposed MOU paragraph 3.04 for a purpose of conforming that to the resolution. And that would be on the third line down, it says 1 to 10 calls shall be compensated at the rate of $100 per month. And that's for the exempt employees, but the resolution has the non-exempt employees receiving $100 a month if there's a minimum response to 10 calls. So I would ask that that third line be changed to read the same as, in the MOU, to read the same as the resolution for the non-exempt employees.
Okay, you had said so in your email. I'm sure all of us got that email. Does staff have a response to that? So this is pointing out, if I understand, what Councilmember Stearns is suggesting is that the exempt employees be given the same $100 extra pay as the non-exempt employees, and that means 10 incidences and not 1 or 2.
It says volunteer. It says volunteer, minimum response of 10 calls for $100.
Right.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll make that.
Okay, so you're suggesting that, do you have something, Mariel?
No, I would say that that was what it was intended to be to begin with, and that's a reasonable request.
Okay. So would you like to make that motion?
Yeah, so I would move approval of the MOU with that one change, that one amendment.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay.
And then I have a brief comment. In the process of the inquiries today, staff noted that we, the city, have unfunded PERS liability totaling almost $3.2 million of unfunded liability. The change in the MOU, the resolution, the compensation for the fire department's not going to make a huge difference one way or the other in that. I do think that at some other time, not tonight, we've got to address that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. And Muriel, can you speak to what we are doing with that PERS liability in terms of what we're budgeting every year?
Well, in this year, I think we budgeted somewhere around $200,000 that is paying part of that liability down. So there's a long-term program in place to pay that liability down. So we're following what CalPERS has suggested we do,
Correct.
or has required that we do.
You made last year, in the last fiscal year, city made it
Could you speak into a little better?
$225,000 payment towards the underfunded portion, while it made full payment on its current year. Now this year, for $200,000 to $250,000 is in your budget you approved, and that money is going to fund that underfunded portion until we make up the amount Councilmember Stearns was pointing out. So you have addressed it already.
I think it's important, though, to point out that this unfunded liability is not something that the city didn't pay what they were supposed to pay in past years, because the city of Mount Shasta has always paid their share of their PERS cost every year. What happened was CalPERS investment strategy, or the projections they were using for what they were going to earn on their investment, was nowhere near what actually happened. Therefore, throughout the entire state, we had unfunded liability because the projections were off. So I think that's important to understand.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, Bruce, for your clarifications. Okay, having finished the consent agenda then, I'd like to move on to item number 8 on your agenda, request for qualifications and proposals regarding the solar energy for city facilities. Bruce, thank you. Thank you, Fire Department. Thank you, Bruce, or Chief Mello.
Is this an indication of how important my presentation is going to be?
You're that popular, yes.
We're all ears, Bruce.
We're all that popular.
I move that we bypass your comments and accept the.
Well, thank you, Mayor Mortar, members of the City Council, interested public. The item before you is a request for qualifications that we have drafted be sent out to energy companies with the intent of getting qualification back to select a firm to do a financing plan, a design, build, and operational program of a photovoltaic energy system for Mount Shasta. This program is designed to train qualified consultants, project feasibility design, operate of the photovoltaic energy system for the wastewater treatment plant, the city hall, the police station, and the library. So that is the overall feasibility. Also within this study is going to be the concept of a solar farm, which could be located on the orchard, but we'd be looking at alternative locational criteria, as well as photovoltaic parking covers on the Parker Plaza parking lot and the city parking lot along Lake Street across from the fire department. So that's what the proposals we're looking for to get back from qualified companies, then enter into the proposal for them to go through, and we want this to be a phased, the ultimate contract to be a phased contract. So we first look at feasibility. What is it going to cost? What are our present flows? And make a determination of feasibility. If that feasibility isn't attractive to the council, you can stop the entire program there. So we take this in segments all the way through the design, build, final construction, and operation. And so we're asking council permission to simply mail out the request for qualifications to get qualified firms, to make a selection to bring back that firm to council with the detached contract for future consideration.
Thank you. Questions for Bruce?
So, this reminds me of the CTC process. So we're going to send out an RFQ to pick a firm to develop and plan this project, including the financing, and what is the expected cost, the consulting fee, whatever, to do that. I don't really remember reading that anywhere. What would you expect to pay, the city to pay for that service? Short of construction, the planning, the whole planning phase.
Yes, well, we're looking at a self-finance program, which the program itself and the savings will finance the program and the operation.
Okay, so
will
I
come out
got
of the
that, and
fees.
that would be, so if it costs $2 million to build out all the solar
Then
components,
right.
sections, there'd be this much savings from our utility bill,
Correct.
Pacific Power bill, and you would go to a lender and say, that savings will pay for, or you'll just well, no, you still have to get a loan.
So the company, the intent here, if we can do this, is select a company that will take us through the entire process, including the construction, ultimate operation, and they will share in those revenues.
Okay,
and
so
they will guarantee to us those revenues.
So the city would not have to pay anything up front.
We're trying to keep the city out of writing checks.
Okay, and then they would be paid for their service,
So
their
they're
planning service, after the savings start coming to
they
fruition.
become our operational arm in the end.
Okay, I get the picture.
All right, so for clarification purposes then, self-finance, can you clarify, self-finance was not defined in the RFQ as to whether or not that means the EMSO, EMCO would be paying for the construction initially, or whether the city would be paying for it. So I think it might be helpful to clarify that in the RFQ.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I also submitted to staff a number of recommendations,
Yes.
which I think staff has gone over and indicated agreement with.
Correct.
I think it'd be helpful to share that with
If the
council
council
members.
wishes, I'd be happy to do that. Okay, so Councilmember Stern's first comment was, if possible, I recommend the ESCOs be allowed to attend the mandatory pre-conference meeting via Skype or GoToMeeting or some other means to encourage a maximum participation and eliminate unnecessary time and distance barriers. We're set up to do that, so yes, of course. Question 2, what does phase contract mean in the RFQ? I think I discussed that already. The entire contract would be broken into phases to give us the ability as we go forward to cancel it without incurring any cancellation causes for not continuing through to the end. 3, that was 3. No, sorry, 3 is, does the term self-finance mean the ESCO finance the project cost or the city finance means that this is financed off the revenues of the project? So I think explaining that in the RFQ will be important. So we'll make that further change. Recommendation at page 57, required services section, number 4 bullet, spell out PA, and PA in that number 4 bullet was not spelled out. PA means preliminary assessment. In bullet number 1 on page 57, it was spelled out and the PA was put in parens, so I didn't re-spell it out, so I think that should be satisfactory. Page 59, item E, change cities, IES, to cities, apostrophe S, which would be correct. Then at page 60, number 4, line 2, delete the word company in front of personnel and just refer strictly to personnel only. We have no problem with that. Number 7, recommendation at page 61, evaluation criteria. So it says, after review, selection committee made up of staff, add city engineer or designee and or consultant. So we would have done that anyway, so we have no problem with that. Number 8, page 62, number 1, add whether ESO will use local subcontractors and or locally hire employee workers as one of the evaluation criteria. And that's agreeable. Number 9, recommendation, page 62, item 5, change company litigation to company/subcontractor litigation. We're looking for here is the history of this company and what litigation is faced in these matters. Since they'll be using subcontractors, we want to add that. So certainly have no problem with that. Number 10, page 63, delete last listed line, in-house versus subcontractor, and reallocate the 5 points to the criteria for number 1, 3, and 8. So we had no problem with that. Number 11, page 63, the table changed litigation period from 7 years to 10 to be consistent with the time period set forth in the preceding criteria. And the criteria did set it at 10. So of course we'd have no problem making that change.
Just a question, thank you. So you have agreed apparently to make the use of local subcontractors one of the criteria?
Criteria, yes.
So what percentage would that be?
It's 5%.
5%.
Yeah. I think it's something worth considering. I would not want something this important and this complicated to be driven primarily by local contractors. Mm-hmm. And our intent to support a local economy, which is very important. Mm-hmm. This is a critical factor. We need to get the best people, but to the degree that they can be encouraged or find it feasible to use locals, I think that there should be points
local
for that.
being Siskiyou County? What's local?
I would have assumed, the council may want to clarify this, I would have assumed Mount Shasta, city up contractors.
Yeah, I was thinking just in terms of from the area, not necessarily in Mount Shasta, because that might be too restrictive, but.
Okay.
But.
Does the council basically concur with that?
Rather than bringing people up from Sacramento or Idaho or something.
Any objections to that, council members? Local being Siskiyou County-ish?
Siskiyou County, yeah.
So we'll make that change also.
Thank you.
I had a quick comment. We're doing questions to staff, right? I had that one correction on the date that you have for the proposal. I gave it to Catherine already, so you have that. Do you want me to go over that? No. Okay. There's just a typo in the document. Okay. Again, comparing to the CTC contract, I want to be sure that the design build is open enough as far as the possible ways to install solar panels. So I know that traditionally many countries use the roof to install panels. It sounds like to me you've already predetermined that they're going to be installed on top of parking carports.
No, I'm sorry, that's one of the alternatives to look at.
Yeah.
In terms of the police station, the fire station, and the city hall, those would be those need to be roof-mounted panels.
Okay.
The solar farm would be obviously not in rooftop panels, since there are no rooftops out there. So there are other arrays. So for a solar farm, basically what you build is like a rack, and then you add the panels as you have current demand, current as in current power demand, and you add the panels to it. So you design it for the ultimate build out and just add to that.
Right.
The library would most likely, though we can't say at this time, most likely be rooftop also.
Okay.
But we wanted to look at the idea, have the consultants, the experts look at what would be the impact and the cost factor of covering those parking lots with solar panels, making them part of the entire
Okay.
system. They may come back and say, yes, you could do it, but it changes the economics negatively in terms of the power generated.
But I definitely would like to see at least the consideration of solar panels installed on rooftops, especially on the buildings that haven't been built yet, because sometimes you can design the building so that the angle of the rooftop is optimal for solar collection.
Certainly.
So if the library hasn't been built yet, if the wastewater treatment plant hasn't been built yet, there's still an opportunity to adjust that roof angle to accommodate. So I just want to be sure that that's part of the consideration.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
One more question. You did mention Orchard property as a possible site. I assume that the property next to the treatment plant would also be a potential site for a solar farm.
Yes.
Okay.
As could the landing, portions of landing.
Okay, so I'd like to just repeat my question, maybe phrased a little bit differently. I'm a proponent of the concept, and I believe it properly designed would reap the benefits that we desire, which is a savings in utility costs, power costs, and therefore, over the long haul, large savings and help the city fiscally speaking. I'm just not sure, do companies do these type of large-scale designs
Yes.
without any money up front?
Yes.
Without any money up front? So this is not unusual, not reinventing the wheel?
No, we're not.
Okay. By asking someone
off-
to
off
basically
base.
front their services in the hope that a project comes to fruition, and then they get paid.
And they're going to have to in writing.
So they're assuming some risk here that the project might flop, and they might actually
Yes.
spend some hours
And when they
and manpower.
guarantee those revenues, if their math is off, they're stuck for the bill.
Right, and this has been done.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there are companies that will balk at that,
Right.
but there are companies that do
That do that, okay.
Yes. And if we get, I guess the worst case scenario, we would send out the RFQ, and the companies that we contacted responded saying, no, we're not
Right.
going to do that. Then we'd bring it back to council.
Okay.
You good, John?
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, I had the pleasure of meeting with Bruce, with one of those contractors, who indeed did say that, exactly that thing, and encouraged us to put forth an RFQ that called for that. And he's not the only company that I have talked with that does that, just having met them at the League of California Cities. At the League meetings, there are these business partners called League Partners, and they are businesses that sponsor activities, hoping they're going to get business from the cities. And I've talked with several of them during some of the sessions I've been at, so I do
We
know
also
that that's
had
what
quite
they do.
extensive conversations with Siemens Industries. And they do
Siemens,
this,
yeah.
and they know, based on our discussions, what my intent is, and they said they plan to submit their qualifications to do.
Siemens?
Yes.
Siemens, S-E-A-M-U-S.
S-I-E-M-E-N-S.
S-E-A-M-U-S. And in fact, that gentleman came to our July hosted meeting of the League Partners, cities here.
So I would make a motion that the council authorize staff to issue the attached request for qualifications With the typo corrections and the recommendations that staff approves, agrees with.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Question, I thought we wanted a little more clarification on the self-finance.
No, well, I think we got it. We've asked it several times.
So that's going to be
We're
part.
going to spell that out in the
You're going to spell that out, okay.
request.
Okay, thank you.
And for the audience edification, there is no one in the audience, so there was no public comment asked for. And won't be for the next item either. Okay, thank you. We're moving on to item number 9, the League of California Cities Annual Conference Resolutions. Kathy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. As you recall, earlier this year, Mayor Mortar was designated as our voting delegate at the League of Cities Annual Conference next month. There are 2 resolutions included in the League of Cities resolutions packet in your agenda. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review those. So I would just request that council would discuss and direct Mayor Mortar as how to vote at the conference.
Comments from council?
Yes, for purpose of discussion, I did read over both the resolutions, and I would recommend the city of Mount Shasta direct our voting delegate, Mayor Kathy Mortar, to vote in favor of each of those 2 resolutions.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that as a motion.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
Yes, I'll second it.
Okay, council discussion.
Yeah, I definitely in support of the second resolution on that local authorities should have authority over pesticides, et cetera, and that states should not impose rules on local jurisdiction. On the first one, the example that comes to mind is the telecommunications small cell. And I think that it's going to be tricky to word that. I don't know how much say or how much conversations you're going to have at the conference as far as what the next steps are for the league on how to word that. I think that what I would like to have seen with the 5G small cell deployment is some collaboration with the cities as far as where those cells would be located, keeping the eye that we want to keep a certain aesthetic within our city. So, I mean, I can't necessarily see the city having complete authority over the 5C implementation. I still want to see the professionals come in with their telecommunication, keep the people that are specialists in that area to take do the technology development and know what's safe for human exposure, et cetera, and to educate us as far as the science behind that deployment, given some of the protests. But what I'm seeing is that if, for example, we had asked the California Pacific Utility Commission to release their jurisdiction and give it to the city, then we would be dealing directly with citizens, and we don't have the know-how to necessarily explain, how this all works.
So, thank you. So let me just, for the purpose of anybody who may be watching, I want to read what the thing is because it's not specific to sell.
Yeah, I know. I understand. There were 3.
But they don't know that.
There were 3.
So I just want to.
There were 3 specific examples that basically says we want to keep local power.
They're talking about preparing a ballot measure or a constitutional amendment. The possibility of the league preparing a ballot measure or a constitutional amendment that would strengthen local authority. Calling upon the league to respond to the increasing vulnerabilities to local municipal authority, control, and revenue. So I don't know how what they're talking about is exploring a ballot measure or a constitutional
So basically,
amendment.
I agree with the first one. I think it's going to be tricky on how to word that. The other example they gave was, for example, the state said that the city could not, over the next 12-year period, could not instate a beverage tax, or soda tax is what it was. So that's something we don't want to see. If we want to have a soda tax and discourage our youth from consuming tons of sugar, we should be able to do that at the local level. There shouldn't be a law where the state says, no, you can't do that, and you can't do that for 12 years. I mean, that certainly we don't want the state imposing laws on us that we would like to instate. So I'm supportive of one. I'm just saying the language is going to be going to be important moving forward on that.
Yeah, so the bottom line for number one is resolved that the League of California Cities should assess the increasing vulnerabilities to local authority control and revenue and explore the preparation of a ballot measure and/or constitutional amendment that would give the state's voters an opportunity to further strengthen local authority and preserve the role of local democracy to best preserve their local quality of life. The resolution comes out of concern from a number of cities that the legislature in Sacramento is preempting fields so that taking authority away from local jurisdictions. Recognizing that there is a lot of lobbying money going into the legislature for particular goals or purposes. And the cities are suggesting that rather than having all the decisions made in Sacramento, that decisions can be made at the local level by each city. So that was the concern, and what this resolution is about, trying to preserve that local authority. So I agree with you. They gave a few examples, but I don't think that's the focus so much as the overall concern that local authority is being diluted.
Yeah, I know. Last couple of years, there have been too many that have been too close to call that we didn't really want to see come our way. So,
and the league has a strong history of supporting either opposition for opposing those bills that come forward that would diminish our authority. And we have a lot of very smart people in the league, staffers, policy, legislative staff, liaisons. Our new executive director, head of the National League, very, very smart, and I trust that they'll figure out a way to do this should the league members approve it at the meeting. Yeah. Other comments, questions?
I'm for
okay.
it. Yeah.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the table. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I've got your marching orders. Thank you. Okay. Council reports on attendance at appointed and outside meetings. I failed to get a note to Kathy in time to put it in here about my report from the executive forum in June. So what I did is I sent out to all of you an email that outlined the summary of the rural community comments I got during that facilitated conversation. I simply forgot to put it here. Yes, that's it. So, and I think I said in the email that there is a task force of us who is meeting, not annually, weekly, to prepare for that annual conference on September. Our date is September 14th. So if you have any comments on the Rural Cities Summary, we are going to organize those issues by policy committee in the league, thinking it would be a better way to engage the participants in that luncheon discussion. Again, the outcome of that luncheon discussion will be to, number one, engage participants such that they share in their concerns, number one, and they give us contact information. Number two is to flesh out some challenges that we all share, as well as some successes, as well as any possible thoughts about how to organize and therefore influence policymakers about things that would improve quality of life in our rural communities. And the third one was to have communication set up such that once that conference is over, assuming the league member, the attendees at that conference, at the session, give it a heads up, a thumbs up, that they have mechanisms to communicate from there on to flesh out various ideas that come up. So those are the objectives of that session. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk over them with you offline. Okay, future agenda items.
Before you get there,
Is there a typo in your report about lack of representation in rural areas or urban? It says lack of representation compared to rural areas. Are you saying compared to urban areas? Lack of representation?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, so
Thank
that's,
you.
anyway, that's your fourth or fifth point, yeah, so.
Thanks.
I thought it was a good compendium list here. And don't want to report on any attendance at a past meeting, but there is a meeting coming up tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock with Lane Richard, who's
He's the assistant to, the name just escaped me, our state senator.
Ted Gaines.
Ted Gaines, thank you.
At City Hall at 10 o'clock. And if the mayor wasn't already planning to attend that, I think that might be a good idea.
I'll find out more about it. Thank you. 10
Pardon?
o'clock tomorrow?
10 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Okay, future agenda items. Any additions to be made?
So I would bring to the council's attention item B, award for City Hall window replacement project. It was awarded the contract that went out into the RFP that the council approved. We got 0 responses. So we could extend the period and hope somebody responds, or we could take this under consideration for going sole source.
How many contractors was the RFP sent to?
Well, we advertised it as we normally do, and then there, from the last time we did the windows, there was a list developed of contractors that expressed interest in that project. That list of contractors all received a direct mailing.
Okay.
All of those on the list chose not to respond.
There was one fellow who, one of those contractors up in Wairika, I don't remember the name, but something Glass, I think. Okay. He says he normally doesn't respond to RFPs, but he responds to telephone calls.
Well, we
Oh, okay. All right. That was my follow-up
So
question.
one of
Thank
the
you.
things we have to be careful about here is we do RFPs through a process so everybody's treated equally. If we start giving one person a phone call, then you got to call everybody. And pretty soon it's unmanageable.
Well, and it sounds like that did happen, so.
So we reached out, we advertised through our normal
Yeah.
process, plus we did direct contact, and we still, no one would respond.
Well, I would suggest that the city then extend the response time.
Yeah, I wonder.
And the windows, I assume the windows are not going to go in this year anyway. Maybe that had been the hope, but we may be looking at next spring.
Why don't we extend it for 45 days?
I've forgotten what the time frame was, what the deadline for installation. Was there a deadline? Because it could be that this is a busy time of year and they're just not going to respond until it's not a busy time of year.
I try to get contractors to do things all the time, and I have never seen it so, never seen contractors in this area so busy.
Yeah.
Really?
I can't get anybody to do anything.
Well, so, Councilmember Engstrom, in your opinion, will 45 days solve the problem?
60 days.
Sure.
Some of them are contracting 6 months from now. Some are 30 days, some are 60 days, but I would give it 60 days.
Is the intent to get the windows in this year, or would it be agreeable to get the windows in springtime?
It would be my belief that was the intent. That would be my belief, but I haven't talked to Rod about it, so I'm making somewhat of an assumption
Well,
here.
what's the budget for this? What's the dollar amount? It was 34, 45, something like that?
Something in that, yeah.
45-ish? Can you remember?
What does it matter?
It matters. People, they're so busy, they're not going to do little jobs anymore.
It's true.
So are you implying that if we don't get any takers on this 60-day offer, that we may have to combine it with something else in order to get a taker? Is that what you're suggesting, John?
That's, yeah.
Okay. Well, so if I understand council correctly, we'll extend it for 60 days, and then we'll either bring it back for award or bring it back for further discussion. Okay.
So I have a couple of suggestions based on this evening's meeting for future agenda items. One being, I believe in the RFQ for the energy companies, that you said that you would have a selection come back to City Council, a proposed selection on October 22nd.
Correct.
So assuming things roll out as you expect, we need to have that on this future agenda. The selection of the energy, what's ESCO stand for? Energy something company, whatever.
Energy consulting company.
Yeah.
Energy service company.
So a 1022, that would be that at that meeting. And then the franchise agreement, the Pacific Power franchise agreement, I would like to suggest that we direct staff to look into it. First of all, find out what we have had, whether Pacific Power has complied with what is in our past agreement. And number two, then direct staff to look at any changes that you would recommend and have that come back to council.
Okay. And do you have a time frame in mind? Staff has already looked at the franchise agreement. I've discussed it with the finance director. There are some legal issues we need to speak to the city attorney about, but we certainly can bring that back to the council.
Well, first off, just a concurrence. Is that something that the rest of you, I guess just one other person, we need concurrence from one other to get it on a future agenda item? Well, that's true.
At this point, it may not be ready to come back to council as an agenda item. Perhaps staff can simply issue a report to council members when that's appropriate.
So
it could be a report that you send to us by email or in our boxes.
I would suggest, yeah, that's a good point. I leave it up to you. Whenever you can fit it in, you have you have quite a bit of time here, within a month, maybe 2 months.
Let's do this.
And
we'll review it.
Right.
We'll assess where it is, what the issues are, put the memo on it, and then if the council wants to set it for hearing, we'll address it at that time.
Well, you'll have to bring it to the council in order to get a feeling for whether or not we want to.
I understand.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else then? Okay, it's my pleasure to adjourn us. Thank you.